Okay, so we've got our keyframes for our flour sack with the main poses that we want to see, and we're expressing surprise here. So we've taken our pose to pose and we've turned that into a guide, and we're going to draw over that. So we're going to draw our keyframes, and we're also going to start drawing breakdowns. And so I'm going to just start at the beginning, and what I'll kind of do is I'll draw one keyframe, I'll go to the next keyframe, and then I'll go in between. So I might want to zoom in a little bit. You can kind of set it up however you want to, but I probably am going to be kind of moving around. And then I may be toggling the onion skin on and off as I'm drawing. So for example, if I'm drawing right here, this actually I can only see right around it, so it's not such a big deal. But if I saw like a lot of other stuff, although it's not really showing me other stuff. That's weird. It's not really showing me the other things. Maybe because it's a guide? No. Huh. So the onion skin is doing something weird. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that too much because I'm not really going to use it anyway. But if I want to toggle in between the onion skin, I can hit Alt-Shift-O, and that'll toggle that on and off. So I'll probably do that a lot when I'm doing breakdowns and in-betweens, because I'm going to want to see where my poses are, but then I may want to, not see as much of the scene, so I can go in and have an easier space to draw. So I'm going to start on frame 1. I've got my new flour sack layer. I'm going to choose a brush, and then I'm just going to do it in black for now. And I'm going to do a little bit heavier, so I'll do like 4 as the stroke size. And I might zoom in a little bit. And then once I'm zoomed in, I can use the space bar to toggle the grabber hand guy, so I can move around a little bit. So once I zoom in a little bit, I'm just going to start by kind of drawing the details here, and then you can decide how detailed you want to be as you're kind of working on this. I don't need to obviously have quite as much lines as I have in my guides, and you can decide if you want like smooth shapes, if you want more sketchy. It's kind of up to you here what you think looks good. I'm just going to use a little bit of sort of lines in the middle to kind of suggest the volume and weight of the sack. Maybe a little one down here. So whatever you want to go for with the style, you might want something really simple, you might want something more complex, but we don't really need to spend too much time on the visual quality of this. We just kind of want to build out our animation. So then I'm going to skip ahead to the next keyframe, and I'll add in a keyframe here. Whoops. So I'll hit F7 there to add a blank keyframe. And so now I can just draw the same thing here. So again, if I want to see what my last drawing looked like, I can hit Alt-Shift-O to turn on the onion skin. And so I'll turn that on and off as a reference a fair amount, just to see what that looks like. But remember, this next pose is the same pose. So you could just use the same drawing again. It kind of depends on what style you're going for. I tend to like to do frame by frame. I like that kind of wiggly quality. You can probably tell from the types of animations that I tend to show that I kind of like it when there's wiggly lines. I like it when things are kind of moving around. So I'm just going to draw this again, just kind of sketch this out. And maybe it'll give the sense that our flour sack is moving around a little bit. Okay, so now I've got my 2 keyframes. So now I'm going to back up and I'm going to draw a breakdown. Again, nothing really happens here. So I'm just kind of drawing this again. Depending on the style you're going for here, you may just copy the keyframe here. You may not even draw this part. You can just use the same art. But I'm going to get my little kind of wiggly style going. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, not bad. So let's keep going. And so then I'll go to my next keyframe, or depending on what, so this is like, 2 frames, depending on where your poses are, you might go and draw those 2 in there. I'm going to move a little bit ahead because I want to get to kind of the main parts of my animation. So now I'm going to do this one where our bag is kind of looking to the side a little bit. And I kind of want to exaggerate this part so it's going to look like it flipped over. So I'm going to kind of pull this up a little bit like that. I don't want to add too much in here. And I'm going to draw just a couple, lines to show the volume here. Something like that. And I don't really like this, so I'm just going to erase this a bit. And try that again. Okay, that's a little bit better. And then I'll skip ahead to the next one, hit F7, and then this is kind of my process. So this is kind of in between. We can see where it's going. Actually, let's pull this over a little bit. So we can see kind of where it's going and where we were. And so we can kind of do resting a little bit here. So instead of pulling all the way up like that, now we're resting a little bit. Just going to undo that and try that again. And so we might show the resting happening with the flour sack as well. So we had a little bit of movement, but now let's just erase here. Now we're kind of resting just a little bit. So we're a little bit surprised. We looked over there, and now we're just kind of resting. Okay. And so then I could draw some in-betweens here. I'll do a few more of these keyframes and then come back. So it kind of depends. You'll sort of like develop your own workflow. We're resting a bit more here, so this is pretty much the same drawing, just a little bit more static. And so I'll bring these lines down a little bit, and then just move ahead, add a new keyframe. Here's a big motion where we snap to the side, so let's do a little breakdown here. So we're going to snap all the way to the side, so we're getting surprised, we're looking over here, and so the weight is kind of shifting, and we want to show that. So we'll show some tension here, the weight shifting over this way, and this is going to be a little bit anchored there, so this is going to stretch out a little bit more. And so we'll just show that a little bit. And then here, we're going to want to have a good breakdown. So most of what's happened so far, let's turn off the guides for a second. So we're sitting, and then we look to one side, and then we kind of rest, and then we snap to the other side. So this is an in-between here. So I'll turn on the onion skin, and turn on, hit F7 to get a new keyframe. So here's an important in-between where we can see where we're going from is this pink line here, and then where we're going to is here. So we need to kind of figure out where is the difference. Is it right in the middle? Is it closer to the left? So there'll be more of a pause before we snap over, or is it farther to the right? So we've snapped over more at this point. I'm going to cheat a bit to the right. So I'm going to move my my kind of top of my sack like up here a bit, and then over here. And we'll see how that goes. I don't have a guide here because I'm just drawing this, so I'm just kind of doing this based on what I think it should look like. You could add more guides in if you want. And then I'm going to kind of like add a couple stress lines like that. So let's turn off the guide for a second and see how that goes. So I probably wanted to cheat even more to the right, but I'm going to leave it for now. Okay. So let's turn on our guides again. So now we're going to keep going. So now we have resting into place on this side after we've snapped over here. And so that looks pretty much similar. I'm just going to draw over the guide and then bring the weight of the flour sack down just a little bit. And so, I would keep going through the animation this way. And I might do this later just for fun. But for now, I hope you guys get the basic idea of doing our in-betweens. Let's look at doing a couple breakdowns. And then I'll let you guys work on your own. So let's see. I did some in-betweens here and back here. Okay, so let's do the breakdown. Sorry, I did some breakdowns here. Let's do some in-betweens. So we have here, and then he snaps that way, and then there. Okay, so if we want to fill those in, let's start with this one. So it's starting to get a bit messy. So I'm going to want to move my onion skin in just to right here, just so I can really focus on what this next motion is. So it's between the pink and the green. And again, I kind of I should have cheated a little bit more to the right, but we're still going to just go in between here. But maybe I'll still cheat to the right a little bit. So I'll just draw this here, and it's just a little bit before the green. And maybe I'll curve this side a bit, so we're kind of shifting the weight that way. And I'll anchor this left side a bit in that space. And then I'll just erase a little bit right here. Okay, so I can clean that up a little bit, but we get the basic idea. And then we want these sort of weight lines to be kind of moving here. Not too ridiculous, but we're moving to the side a little bit. And so let's turn off our onion skin and play that back. Okay, so we have one more in between to do here. I'll turn the onion skin back on, hit F7 to get a blank keyframe. And now we're doing in between, again, the pink and the green. So I'm gonna still cheat to the right a little bit. So I'm just gonna put this up here and this down here. So I'm just right before the green, which is where we're headed. And then actually let's curve this again and just start to poke it out a little bit. You can kind of play around with this. I really recommend just like trying something. Don't spend too much time on one individual frame. Just draw what you think makes sense. And when you go back and watch it later, if it doesn't work or if something is too, stiff or something like that, it'll stand out. You can go back, find that frame, and just fix it. So as animators, we don't want to get too caught up in drawing one frame or one drawing, because we're probably going to have to redraw it at some point anyway, especially this early on in our process. And that's what these studies are kind of for, to get us in the habit of just like drawing out, sketching out, and then trying things. So I'm going to loop this so I can get a sense of the playback real quick. Okay, and then I'm going to go back a little bit, see how that looks. Okay, that's not bad. It's not great, but I'm getting close to what I want. And then we can turn off our guide if we want to see what that looks like on its own. Okay, so once I do all the in-betweens, I think that's going to start to look pretty nice. And so I'm just going to keep going like that. I'd probably do all my keyframes going through, then come back, do all my breakdowns, so halfway between my keyframes, and then come back and do all the in-betweens. But it really doesn't matter. You can work on it in whatever style is kind of like best for you. Some people really like to just go frame by frame by frame. Some people want to break everything down into, smaller and smaller poses. You can kind of play with that and figure out a workflow that is good for you. I'm not going to take up too much time, so hopefully you guys get the basic idea and you can finish this out. So of course I would continue to go through the rest of the animation the same way that we just saw there, going through the key poses, drawing those out, then coming back, doing the breakdowns, then the in-betweens. I'm going to go over exporting and posting again, but I'm going to stop the video first and go over that, but we've already talked about it, so I'm not going to record that part.